So, love is not a Michael Jackson homage. I just smashed my finger and that point for that view everywhere. KitchenAid mixers. I buy broken mixers on eBay and repair them. So, I think. And so John likes to say that our naive charm makes us look authentic. And that's mostly true because we are authentically bad at this. But it's especially true here because this is really repair work. There's type of video on YouTube where people buy nearly worthless items and then spend dozens of hours and hundreds of euros in restoring them to better than factory conditions. Because for them, the video is the product and not the item they're working on. That's not what I'm doing. This is really, I try to buy them cheap and try to do an economic repair. So I do not mind if tools show their age. After all, I do. I just want them to work.
But the question is, why KitchenAids in particular?
KitchenAids.
Why is that your?
I always wanted one. When I was a teenager, the KitchenAid was the Apple IIc of kitchen appliances, because you knew it was rather more expensive than most other things that were on offer, and you knew it lacked inexplicably some features that the more cheaper offers had. I mean, who needs lowercase letters or anything like that? Actually, that was all you knew, but the fact that they were so unobtainable made them somehow special. So if they weren't great, then folks like you would be able to afford them. So
it's true.
By means of not being affordable. Yeah, both the Apple and the KitchenAid mixers were great.
And where are they American KitchenAids?
Yeah, they are. KitchenAid brand was invented by Hobart. Hobart is still around, but they do not do mixers anymore. They do dishwashers, industrial dishwashers and stuff like that. They developed stand mixers in the 20s, I think, and then came up with basically this model in the 1940s, the K model. And then it was designed for industrial work, for gastronomy work, but they then thought that they might be able to sell this to the private households. And the name is allegedly when they introduced it to the wife of executives, because they were looking for a name, and one of the wives said, "I don't care what you call it, but it's the best KitchenAid I ever had."
Oh, so the name was born, right?
That's almost certainly bullshit, but it's
it's a nice marketing story. They have a very classic 50s look to them when I see them.
Basically unchanged. So even though it's no longer Hobart sold this off in 1986, I think, to Whirlpool, who continue to buy basically the same model, but with deteriorating quality.
Are these vintage ones or are these modern ones, and they've just kept the same design?
It depends when vintage starts for you.
Well, I mean, are these like classic? Are these how old? Well, maybe I'll rephrase the question. How old are these ones that you have here?
It's always a bit difficult to say because the design really hasn't changed a lot, but those are all from the last 20 years, I think.
Oh, okay.
They're not really old. This especially because this has a different type of motor. So there are broadly three things that distinguish the individual mixers. And one is bowl size. That's a standard bowl. That's 4.8 liters, I think.
Okay.
The smallest bowl is the KitchenAid Mini, which is 3.3 liters, which is really nonsense. The KitchenAid Mini is a machine I do not have, and it should not exist in my opinion, because it combines a bowl that is too small with a motor that's too weak. So
right, there's not much you can do really.
This is a KitchenAid Classic. This is pretty much what you think of when you hear KitchenAid. This is also a very nostalgic piece for me. I always wanted a KitchenAid, as I mentioned, and in the second year of my marriage with Sharon, she actually gave me one for my birthday.
Oh, that's nice.
It was not only nice, it was, I mean, at that time money was pretty scarce with us.
Right.
She really must have saved up at Citrus to afford this, because it was like a few attachments, like 500 euros, which was a lot of money at the time. So, nostalgia. Maybe that's why I repair KitchenAids and fixing the broken things in my life.
That's quite cool.
Amazing thing, psychology.
Yeah.
Rather than religion, even a price when you do not believe in it.
Yeah.
So bowl size is one. This is a standard bowl of 4.8 liters, which is basically the same for the classic. And this is an ultra power or whatever. This is an artisan. The names do not actually mean very much, because these are absolutely identical machines, just with a different name. So the other distinction is the motor. This is a classic with a 275 watt motor. Doesn't sound really like much, but on the other hand, the 250 watt motor is the legal limit for a German e-bike, insurance free, so which propels the person at 6 kilometers, so it's not that weak. These have both 300 watts, no, 350 watts. This is what KitchenAid calls a heavy duty, 350 watts. And this is the larger version of the heavy duty, which on the package boasts 1.5 horsepower, which peak output, which is completely meaningless. It has a 500 watt continuous output, which is the relevant number.
So what would you need the higher power for? Is it a particular recipe or a kitchen?
Yeah, if you have heavier doughs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
are these primarily for dough, or?
That's what they do best, and that was what they meant it for. There are other different attachments. There are also, pedal attachments for more liquid.
Okay, yeah. So.
Whisks, and then this is called an attachment hub. This is where you can put on additional attachments like vegetable slices and pasta makers and whatever. Try not to lose these covers. This is 20 euros a piece, and the screw is another 20 euros.
Oh.
Spare parts are criminally expensive. So one distinction is the bolt size, the other distinction is the motor, and the third distinction is if it's a tilt head or a bowl lift. Tilt head is literally, you can tilt the head back.
Okay.
It gives you better clearance if you want to put on or remove attachments and take out the bowl. But it tends to wobble when the motor runs, because the motor is up here and it's moving, and then it makes a lot of noise. Pull this lever and the bowl goes up and down.
Okay,
it's a lot quieter when you work with it, but you don't have a lot of clearance to get the attachments and the bolts out. So I still prefer this one, really. So this is, I think, the biggest machine that I have for private households. I don't have a bowl for this because I first need to get it running. I don't want to invest in spare parts before I know this is actually working. I bought this at a bakery who were cleaning their inventory. This is actually a more modern machine than these ones, even if it looks broadly the same, because these have what you call a universal motor, which is basically this one. It's very simple. We can do another video how a motor works, but this is the most basic electrical motor that you can imagine. And these ones have a brushless motor, and the brushless motor requires an electronic regulation. This basically, you connect it to power and it runs. This needs a rather sophisticated electronic thing going to work at all. So that was the brief introduction to KitchenAid. Quality, yeah, they are declining in quality. You can see it in details such as this one. This is a spring and whatever you call this, and this pushes the attachment down when you put it on here, because else the attachment would start to wobble. And modern machines do not have this because Whirlpool somehow figured out that this was not really necessary. But it is. You should have something like this. But you can't get it anymore. You can't get the spare part anymore. So people tend to come up with their own solution to put on springs and washers. Yeah.
Mm.
You need at least a washer before the spring, because if you just set the spring, then it will eat into the attachment, because the attachments are cast aluminium. They are a bit brittle. So that's a short introduction to KitchenAid mixers.
Yeah, I think interesting.
Should you buy a used mixer? Thanks for asking, John.
Yeah, no, sorry. Okay. Should one buy a used mixer?
Yeah, you can buy one of mine. I have lots of them. Yes, maybe. If you should ask how old the mixer is, because there's a lot of grease in there, and the grease Whirlpool uses after a few years separates into liquid and solid parts, and the liquid parts start seeping out, which is A, not very nice, and B, it means that your gears are no longer properly lubricated and tend to fail. So if your machine, the machine you intend to buy, is older than 3 or 4 years, you should have it re-greased, which will set you back probably 70 to 80 euros if you have it done professionally. Or you just run it until it breaks and risk that the damage will be more severe than if you had it serviced.
So these are really something you have to look after. And
yes,
yeah.
Amazingly, given the provenance, my brother is a proper baker. So my brother has a Hobart mixer, which is basically this, and his is 50 years old. And aside from a few seals and washers, it still runs on original parts. These are all less than 20 years, and these were all broken.
Okay.
So they need to be serviced once in a while. Should you buy a broken KitchenAid mixer and service it yourself? Probably not. I'm doing this because I just like the fiddling. It's quite a rewarding project because you get a sense of accomplishment, but they are so simple built that you practically cannot fail with your repairs. The question is it worth it? If you go to eBay, you will, for a machine like this, probably pay 100 euros without a bowl and without attachments and with some defect. At the easiest, it's the motor brushes, which sit here behind these little black covers. So if it says the motor doesn't move at all, then it's probably the brushes, and that's 5 euros to replace. So not a huge thing. But there might also be other damage. If the main gear is damaged, you will have to pay some 40 euros for the spare part and have to take it completely apart. And you need new grease, certainly. So it's really a bit of a gamble if it's actually worth it. For me, it's a bit easier because I have so many that I can reuse spare parts from other machines, so I don't always have to pay the full price.
Yeah, speaking of other machines, I just noticed that this rather attractive yellow one here.
Yeah, that's pretty much gone because I used it for parts.
Oh, right. So this was just for spare parts, right?
Yeah, because
I'm sure there's not much left of it.
Well, actually, there is much left. I mean, I used some of the smaller parts are criminally expensive. There's a little pin. This one, this is hardened steel. It's about 3 millimeters. It weighs about 2 grams, and it's 11 euro, which is a lot for 2 grams of steel. Some of the parts are not even available. These are mostly decorative.
Oh, that's the strap that goes around the top, right?
Exactly. Doesn't have an official name. Most people call it beauty band or something like that. And it's you cannot buy it in Europe, not as a private person in any case. I assume service partners from KitchenAid can do it. Yeah.
Well, that's quite a interesting project you have with a
Yeah.
nice story attached to it. Well, so you're saying that if you want to repair these yourself, you really have to know what you're doing, and the parts. So what I picked up is the parts are very expensive and hard to come by, but some people can come up with their own solutions if they know what they're doing.
Well, I mean, yes, sure. For most parts, I think if the motor is gone, this will probably not something you can do yourself.
No.
If you have a dough that's too heavy and you run the motor is not supposed to run for more than 10 minutes at
Okay.
a time. So if you look at these copper windings, it's looking like the wires are touching each other, but they aren't. They are insulated against each other. And if the motor gets too hot, then the insulation melts and then the motor shorts out.
Okay. So
And there's no real economic way to rewire it yourself. You would have to buy a rotor, and that's 150 euros.
okay. Well,
But it happens not very often. It does not happen often because of this. As you see this yellow thingy, this is nylon. This is a sacrificial gear. If your KitchenAid gets stuck, then this breaks.
okay.
Ideally, it breaks. Sometimes it does not break. And then you get something like this, because that's cast iron and that broke.
Okay. Wow.
So the nylon gear was completely okay, but this one, this is actually this is the main gear. This drives the attachment up. You see, this goes here.
Mm-hmm.
So this surface is here, and so that way around. So and this as this rotates, it drives this. Yeah, KitchenAid.
Yeah. So that was a short introduction to the wonderful world of KitchenAid.
Yes, and if you want, I can later video explain, since you were asking how this actually works on the inside, because we have a patient
Yeah,
here.
that would be interesting. It'd be good
Yeah.
to see one in use as well at some point. Be nice to see one in use, like you using it. It would be at some point.
Joe, no?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you spend all this time repairing them, you might as well use them.
Oh, and there's one other important distinction. If you
Oh, we've got another one here. Wow.
Yeah, we've got another one here, and that's an American one, and that's a very important distinction. You can luckily not accidentally plug it in because it has an American plug,
Okay.
but this is 110 watts. So if you were able to plug it in somewhere in a European outlet, it would burn out the motor because
Because of the wattage difference, right? Wow. Well, thank you very much, Eike. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.